Our journey begins with the selection of a tutorial and the creation of a character. Which try as you might to make them not look evil, they will look evil. I created Agent 47 from the hit game Arm Joe. The first challenge is to try watching these tutorials without zoning out. At this, I failed, so instead I just skipped ahead to playing the game. In the monkey era, there isn't much to talk about. I kinda just wandered around reading the frequent messages that would pop up on the screen. The big surprise was when I chose my first era culture, only to find out that Agent 47 was deep undercover as an Egyptian woman. We also killed a deer, which was pretty exciting. Probably not for the deer though. Also, our first city is called Memphis. I have no jokes about this, I just thought it was neat. The name of the game in the early game is claiming territory using outposts. I decided to cut off their capital from their forward outpost by making an outpost of my own, named after one of the most prestigious high-flying birds in the animal kingdom. One cool thing about Humankind is that you can commit war crimes on your neighbors without actually being at war. I, for example, killed these people's runners, then burnt down their outpost without ever technically being at war. Now, this isn't without consequence, because your neighbors will start making a laundry list of grievances against you, and you will simply say, hey, you started. And they did start it, by the way. And this wouldn't be a proper warmongering simulator without save-scumming battles. There's nothing better than having enough confidence to go to war, but not enough confidence to avoid making a save. At this point in the video, I should have just glazed over the 5 to 10 times I reloaded this overly confident name save, but I'm not going to. These people completely destroyed my armies in every simulation and strategy I ran. The horses, they were everywhere. So I made the bold choice of cowardice and instead hunkered down in my base, building it up and abstaining from the intoxicants that poison the mind. I also obtained the Domino Rock Wonder and unlocked the ability to haphazardly throw large quantities of people at my problems in order to become a better influencer. I guess previously, if one army saw another army getting trampled by horses from 2 squares away, they would simply go, dang, that's crazy, and proceed to wait for their turn to get absolutely demolished. After repeatedly getting run into the ground, I rubbed enough neurons together to discover I could obtain the resources that were in range of my outposts, and I too obtained the horsey. This also coincided with me unlocking my next era, which I promptly chose the Huns because the internet told me to. Hey, look at that! Agent 47 took off his disguise, he's back. New eras mean new units, new resources, and new sources of labor. After getting killed on my own land once again using cheap troops, I decided to whip out the Huns Egyptian Gods card. I then accidentally chose the instant resolution button, which although we won, it was kind of anticlimactic for a first showing off of the troops. Also, side note, instant resolutions is not like 3 Kingdoms. You can look mostly good on paper with your side marked as the victor and still get smashed into the dirt. One more side note, this made me quite angry, so I marched 2 armies south and began forming another one to begin our crusades. Our religion is capitalism. I am God, and if you want forgiveness, I take cash, credit, and nuclear weapons. Anyways, we took the city because I did another instant resolution to be safe. I also continued to click buttons for several minutes to try to figure out why I can't use the new city. Then I opened up a 401k and started paying weekly stipends to my army to keep them employed under the Galactic Empire. I began to get the feeling I was a little over my head when fighting this horse, but I kept pushing anyways. We used the Avengers of Wrongdoing to take this city from Team Mystic, which they took from these innocent travelers who took it from nature. And what can I say, we took every territory from Team Mystic until they had nothing left. Almost nothing. They had 1 island retreat left, but we were forced to force surrender on them this turn. I couldn't cancel these negotiations and lap the turn, and I couldn't take the final island to wipe them out for good. So we pulled off the tactical maneuver of giving them back most of their land and only keeping the main built-up cities. They were so happy about this that they even asked for a luxury trade deal shortly after. That's what I call a healthy working relationship. And we were able to assimilate the final independent people for 400 influence. It's kind of like a not as hostile takeover of everyone and everything they have. All those war crimes ended up getting us a lot of recognition from around the globe, and we made it to the next era. And in this next era, we became the Franks. Shortly after becoming the Franks, we surrendered territory to independent invaders. However, after assembling a large force, we were able to take it back with 0 losses to our own. Ironically, we reached the point where the oppressed were oppressing the oppressors, so I had to once again declare war on our neighbors before we ventured to the new land. After a couple of decent battles against the enemy, all of their land was ours once again. And once again, it was our time to advance to the next era. I chose the Dutch because, I mean, just look at how certified fresh our leader is looking right now. Then we were able to negotiate with the Eagle Scouts to surrender their turf for the 2nd or 3rd time. Now, I've glossed over pretty much all the city building in my empire, and the reason for this is simple. I'm an absolute ape when it comes to this. I look at the pretty picture, occasionally I look at what it does, and then I queue it up so I can keep lapping turns and advancing my army. I haven't read the majority of what any of this does, and I don't intend to until we reach the nukes. But speaking of advancing my army, I will be going across the deep sea now to begin attacking the enemy because I crave more shiny rocks.
Will this independent people be an ally or an enemy? A barrier?
I'll stop you right there. They are a barrier. After disembarking the boat and charging through darkness misguided by these pop-ups, I discovered I was way too underpowered to attack these independent people with one army. Upon retreating, my people decided to literally run all of the way out of their territory and into Mayan territory, which they didn't take too kindly to. I didn't want to start a war, so I retreated once again, even though I could have easily taken that army. However, of course, upon retreating, my army of ragtag half-wits ran even deeper into their territory. As you can imagine, I ran into a much bigger army deeper into their territory, resulting in a great reload of my save. This time, I moved my troops back to the shore in the independent territory and waited to bring in the other two armies I had prepared. I'll be honest, taking this city didn't start off great. We had to battle the enemies first, and they got first play. I also didn't set up my army correctly, so they pretty much spawned right in on the flag. Fortunately, they were so behind in technology that their once dominant horse cart guys now took 40 damage even when I was defending. Not to mention, I could one-shot their entire army thanks to the highly advanced technology of pointier sticks and crossbow bolts. Suffice to say, my army was bigger and better than their army, and we won pretty easily. Once again, our acts of kindness to humanity got us a seat in the new industrial era. With plans to erase the Mayan Empire, I chose the militarist empire of the Germans. I guess they were rather aggressive during this era. My greeting to the grand new era was this single horseman attacking my entire army. I laughed at this fool at the time. I looked down on him, although technically I guess I was looking up, and now the Mayans were bringing literally every army in their empire to erase me. We got choked up on this beach and we couldn't fully unpack two of our armies, meaning an already bad fight for us got even worse. And even worse than all that was waiting 10 minutes for the AI to move every single unit in their empire down to this beach to fight me. I started looking over my empire, walking around, I made dinner, I watched TV, then I came back and they were still moving troops. Finally, we got to my turn and I still had nowhere to go and very little to do. It took 6 battle rounds, I had to lap a turn, and it took 20 minutes to resolve a fight I shouldn't have ever even taken. I was determined to get my revenge though. I wasn't gonna let these punks do this to my people. So I assembled a grand army of the toughest anti-cavalry units I could get and got a bunch of crossbowmen as well. I brought 5 armies over by boat and had them join forces with the remnants of the 2 armies that were left behind in the new land. Now I was going to have an army hang around off their shore to run into their capital as soon as I distracted them with my large army. However, after auto-resolving 2 battles and winning both, everyone on board our flanking ship died. We were pretty much all in on the Megazord army that contained 32 powerful units from a future era to them and a past era to us. The coolest part about having a giant army is moving them around and constantly scaring the AI into fleeing, which by the way gets us 5 war support every time we do it. So I kept advancing our armies towards their capital, feeling the power of scaring every enemy that came in our path. Also, we built Machu Picchu and intercepted Big Ben before the British could get it. And that's when the Battle of Aniara began. They shockingly challenged our mighty army of 1,300 with only an apparent 420, nice, of their own. Obviously, I took this battle and began organizing my troops to be melee in the front and ranged in the back, with 3 armies that were being prevented from joining the battle. And we won this battle through our superior troop types and number advantage. However, the true challenge was the second half of the Battle of Aniara. I mistakenly moved an army into a ditch and they surrounded our 1,300 people with their 1,000 people. However, they for the most part had the high ground. They engaged, so they had the first play, and with their massive amount of troops they took out a good few of ours, even swinging the battle in their favor by the end of the turn. But then they made a huge mistake. They let me have a turn. And I'll tell you what, the Aztecs may be playing, but I'm not. This is real life. So I took my spearmen and proceeded to one-shot many horses and infantry people. Then I spread out my troops, and every time I took down a unit, I moved out a unit. Bit by bit, we whittled away their army until the only ones left were the ones being prevented from existing by a single absolute unit. They were never given the chance to spawn, and the battle ended shortly after. We traded 6 good men for 30 enemies. All in all, I would say it was a battle well won. But the war was far from done. We haven't even truly taken a territory. So I rubbed money on my soldiers' wounds to heal them, then we kept marching forward. I began a battle against a random army in my path, but to my surprise, he actually accepted. I rewarded him with death and we kept moving. I was then approached by yet another army, whomst we had to dismiss with our blades. And immediately after, another battle was begun with this dude. So we also showed him and his pals the way to the dirt. Then we took the capital and all the outposts with it. So because we were so dominant, the game decided to stop me from doing any more conquering and force a surrender screen I could not avoid. We had to settle for 100 war support, so I took 2 outposts from him that had critical resources that we will use later on to take more land from him. We then began building the Eiffel Tower next to the Big Ben, and I ate dinner because I had been playing the game for about 8 hours straight. This may or may not have contributed to me choosing the Aussies as my contemporary era culture, even though the Chinese culture would have perfectly completed our Agent 47 look. For a while, I focused on self-reflection, trying to improve our research tree so we could discover the more important things in life, like nukes, tanks, and semi-automatic weapons. Things were going so well. I actually made a wild demand to the Aztecs requesting they give me land for oppressing my people, people and they accepted, which is cool. 200 years down the road, I finally began building a hangar to shelter planes, and nuclear technology was researched shortly thereafter. Alright, yeah, hang on. Let's close this. I'm reading about nukes. Apparently we shot a test nuke at our own territory. That's rather unfortunate. 3 out of 5 instructions unclear on that one. It turns out we can now make nuclear missiles in this screen, except we can't really, because in all of our empire, we have 1 uranium and 1 aluminum. Additionally, with this lack of aluminum, we can't make all the fun tanks, nor can we make all the fun planes or the nukes. This makes me quite angry, so it looks like I'll just have to do this the old-fashioned way. We are upgrading all of our medieval troops to be World War II soldiers, and we are making lots of heavy gunners as well. Why are you making me do this? By the way, yes, it is 1948. Yes, these are innocent people with tech from 200 years ago, and yes, we are one-shotting all of them even during the defense phase. I made a mistake on the other side of the map with the heavy gunners. They can't move through walls, but luckily I do have reinforcements here that can. This is what it looks like when they try to attack our heavy gunners. That's about where we're at. Also, if you're curious, here's a World War II fighter jet attacking a medieval wooden boat. Once again, we cleared out all of the Zulu people, formerly known as the Mayans, and we once again had to settle with the light green team. However, I think we can now confidently invade the purple team and negotiate to take all the territories with uranium and aluminum so we can nuke everyone for a very satisfying ending. These are the contemporary era Brazilians, by the way, and they still don't have gunmen. We just mow down a few people here and a few people there. We have acquired the second uranium and aluminum. Now I just need 1 more aluminum to make nukes. After taking 1 more territory, we reached the point where our war crimes needed to be stopped, so it was time for surrender. This time, something was different though, in the way that this screen was completely blank. I clicked through all the tabs, I restarted the game, I went back a turn, I did it all, and there was no way to accept or decline any type of surrender. Then upon looking these things up on Reddit, I found out that this infinite turn thing was not supposed to happen at the end of the game here, and also I remembered that I never actually got to choose any of the settings in my world, because I chose the advanced tutorial option when I logged into the game. Additionally, I wasn't allowed to continue, but I guess if I were able to keep going, other people who fell into the same situation had no way to beat the game, even after getting all the glory and everything else. Basically, from my understanding, the tutorial glitched out the game, and technically the tutorial never ended. Seeing as I cannot lap any more turns, nor could I put an end to these talks, this was unfortunately the end of the Australian Empire, and the tutorial, led by the kind and forgiving Agent 47. I'm ranking this tutorial at the tutorial tier. Although one of the longest tutorials I've ever played, it was very thorough and it was an experience I will not soon forget. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out one of these. Also, we will be doing more things in Humankind, like possibly starting the Florida Man Crusades and erasing the entire world with nukes if we can get our hands on enough resources. And as always, thanks for watching.